are you setting us up there with, Ryan?
Well, Cobe, since we're here at Montgomery Distillery in our backroom podcast, Ryan Montgomery, they've just released, literally, this Jacob, the bartender, was kind enough to let us bring a bottle back and told us today that this has been in barrels for the past 2 years, and they just bottled it this weekend. So we're pretty lucky to be here today.
Absolutely.
And I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's my understanding that translated in German for cherry water, Kirschwasser or Kirschwasser. And as lucky as we are to live here in Montana, this fine, distilled, delicious, aged 2 years, the batch number is not even on here, so that means it's right off of the line. It's a cherry brandy, to cut to the chase.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and I love that on the bottle it says distilled and bottled by Montgomery Distillery, small batch. So,
and I think this is a small batch. Jacob was saying that, I mean, they took 1,000 pounds of cherries. They
flathead cherries from Flathead Lake, which hopefully, if you don't know where that is,
come to Montana and visit.
Yep. Or Google it and then come and check it out because it's amazing. But go ahead with.
Well, I was going to say, to digress a moment, right there around Flathead Lake, it's a very good cherry growing region, and so they have a real prevalence of cherry orchards, and then they have a big harvest. And he was saying that they took 1,000 pounds of Flathead cherries. They hand stemmed them, hand pitted them, pulled all the leaves out, did all that work by hand, and then they distilled that down. And then, as you mentioned, put it into barrels and just pulled that out for us to try here on the podcast.
Let's take her for a test drive.
I think so. Cheers.
Cilantro.
Prost. Oh, yeah. That's so great.
Wow.
Really big fan of that. Yeah.
Kind of lingers a moment.
Well, you can taste the cherry in it, which is kind of nice.
But it's not overwhelming.
Oh,
because
no.
I do not like fruit really in my booze.
Right.
Or beer.
Uh-huh.
I know there's a time and place for it, but this complements it very nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you're saying. You know, an off-the-shelf, big brand vodka that's, flavored.
Tastes like...
I think I had s'more one time.
I don't even know what that is.
Like s'mores, like around the campfire.
Awful.
S'mores vodka.
No.
No, you can't do that. But this is truly a brandy, not a flavored vodka. And I'm a big fan of brandy. I think brandy, it is kind of coming on right now. A lot of people speak to that. But I have always been really pleased with apple brandies, grape brandies. And now, this being the first time I've had it, Flathead Cherry brandy is.
I think the timing is ideal because literally we're in our... Are we going to call this our first official podcast?
Yeah, this is episode 1. This is episode 1, the bonus feature.
Okay. Nice. Very good.
Not on the podcast probably because it'll just get cut into, but as far as our video cast in 360, which, by the way, we're in 360 here, so you can look over here and check out that bottle.
Check that out.
Even when Ryan sets it down, you can either look at our cocktails, this cool shot glass with Montgomery Distillery on it, or that bottle there.
It's I think it's just perfect timing and served neat and chilled as an aperitif or at room temperature after a meal, which is perfect because I just had a Bloody Mary and they serve a very nice little accoutrement on the top of it. And I can see a fire crackling, maybe some snow, which is thankfully not the case today. But this, I think, is just perfect timing, and really excited. And I can't wait to have Ryan on the podcast and talk about how he came up with it and how they went about it, and just let him tell us all about it.
For sure. You know, I think there's a couple of things that are going on here that are really exciting. And one of them is that as I've come to understand a little bit about the spirits realm, not having been a big spirits drinker until I learned about craft spirits, because I just avoided it because it was all big batch factory stuff.
Yeah.
Now that there's craft, I've been getting into spirits more, and I've just started to understand more and more about how kind of narrow the cocktail culture in America had been for so long, and how narrow our spirits culture is. And
Very.
the opportunities with aperitifs and liqueurs and having multi-course meals where you start out with a cocktail, there's a mid-meal cocktail, and it's all paired and it's all working together, and then like you said, ending the meal with an aperitif like this. So exciting.
So exciting.
Last Christmas I was fortunate enough to get to sit down with the folks from Whidbey Island Distillery, which is a little island off the coast of Washington State.
Cool.
They do a very small batch, all foraged berries is what they use in their liqueurs, and they're world class. They send them to the biggest spirits competition in the world, and they do it strictly so they can get feedback on how they can improve.
Wow.
And they get great tasting notes back from that, and they make some amazing liqueurs. I sat down with it's a couple, the parents, and then their son builds the still, and they all kind of work together to make this thing happen. And we all sat down on the night before Christmas and sampled through their whole lineup, and that was
fun.
amazing. I encourage you to check those guys out. Also encourage you to check out Montgomery Distillery.
No
And
question.
then everybody else that's jumping into the liqueur and aperitifs and really start to expand your repertoire. And we're excited here on the podcast and at MicroShiner to start to open people's eyes to all the opportunity in the spirits realm for not just knocking back shots or jello
Right.
shots or whatever it is we've been doing here in America with hurricanes and I don't know what.
Wildfires and
Prairie
economy
fire.
that's just kind of,
Yeah.
There's so much going on. Not all good, not all bad. But hopefully we're going to introduce a small batch lifestyle and introduce people in our audience to just the small, and we talked about it in the podcast, and I'm going to go back and talk about it right now. It's a small batch lifestyle, and we want to introduce people to that lifestyle, supporting local, keeping the money in the economy, asking the questions, where this came from, who was behind it, what was I can't wait to have Ryan on here and say, how did you come up with this concept?
Right.
And
Why did this come to be?
Right. Why is this here? Was it a trip that you and your wife and family took, or is it just something that presented itself? It's about the stories and just kind of becoming on a personal basis, like you and I are talking right now, instead of the big, noisy world that we live in. I'm excited to be hosting the podcast and hopefully have people, not hopefully, but we will have people on here that just are so enthusiastic and pumped on life and want to talk about their hard work. And I want to celebrate that with them. And I feel like this is kind of going back into history. And I'm having a cocktail right now that I had last week. And Oro o Plata? Is that
Oro y Plata?
And Kobe said it last week. It kind of centers around Montana, gold and silver, and it has Ryan's Quicksilver vodka in it. But I am a big history fan. I was a history major in college, and I kind of love the fact that I think history does come full circle, and I feel like with the technology that we have nowadays, it's great, but it's somewhat of a distraction. And hopefully, this podcast kind of brings things back into reality and introduces people like Ryan and all the other guests we're going to have on a small batch lifestyle form. And just, we want a small, quaint audience that can ask questions and see where the ingredients are sourced. And I'm so excited about it. Now I'm starting to stumble over my words just because there's so much going on inside my melon right now that it's just, I think it's going to be great, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, for sure. I feel the same way, and that's why I started MicroShiner, and it's why you and I sat down and came up with this podcast concept, and why we're sitting here today this afternoon dedicating our time to doing it, and hopefully a lot of folks are dedicating their time to giving it a quick listen. And what you're saying is exactly right. We don't want to spend a lot of time making somebody sit on their phone and listen to these conversations. We want to act as inspiration and guides in all this, because there is so much noise. And we want to be able to say, actually, we've already gone and done a little homework on a few of these things. You don't have to do all the legwork. We want you to do a lot.
Yep.
But we're here to do some. And we want to be your guides.
Right.
And help guide you into this small batch lifestyle, so that you can experience these things that we're experiencing, get to meet these same people. And it was something that I wanted to bring up earlier, because you mentioned it, how one of the things we're trying to do at MicroShiner is introduce you to people all around the country, because we're in this really amazing moment in world history, in that I can have a personal network, be a part of a community that can be in India and in Singapore and in Helsinki and Missoula, Montana, all at the same time. And it's because we share the same values and we share the same mindset, and we may not be in the same place, but we can be in the same space in our minds and how we're living our lives. And then when we do go to these other places, you can look back in the MicroShiner archives and you can find out where these people are, and we will personally introduce you to a lot of these folks. Because we have relationships with them, and we'll just leverage that and say, hey, listen, when you get into town, look up Ryan Montgomery, tell him MicroShiner sent you, and he's going to set you up, and it's going to be great. Yeah,
it's so cool. And it just kind of like, it makes me think about, like I said a minute ago, history. And Prohibition came around for a reason, government, and then I think they realized, hey, this is bigger than, there's no stopping this. And then the moonshiners kind of came about, went into the hills and made their hooch, and which is awesome. And it's just, they made the stills, and it just kind of turned into a full evolution. And I feel like we've come full circle, and I cannot wait for people to either that haven't been here. Hopefully we can take the podcast and explore somehow, but Ryan's copper still out front, and just the whole process is so cool. And the hard work that these guys did 2 years ago, going flathead, getting the cherries. It wasn't a machine, it wasn't robotics, it was people using their hands, taking the leaves off, taking the stems off, mashing them, putting them in the barrels, letting them do their thing for 2 years, and then they said, you know what, it's time. So super excited that we're here today, debuting Ryan's latest and greatest, and so stoked to have him on the show. Again, talk about the history of where he came up with Montgomery Distillery and his vision. Really stoked about it, but I think it's great timing, and as I said, I feel like it's come full circle, and hopefully we are able to just be a little bit of a platform and introduce people to something maybe they didn't know about, or maybe they're interested, and just give us a couple minutes and wow, those guys have something cool, I'm gonna listen to them. They're funny, they're not funny, whatever. But whatever it is they're talking about, I'm interested in it because it's small, it's local, and maybe they have wanted to support that, but they just didn't know how to go about it.
We definitely want to be that entry point. You know, we're here to help you get into that.
Yeah.
And that's what I aim to do with MicroShiner. I think that's what you're going to be doing here with the podcast, and it's just really exciting, and it's a great moment in time, and we're lucky.
Very lucky.